The Fantastic Four First Steps is the latest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First, I'm going to share my spoiler-free review, and then I'll give a very clear spoiler warning before I share some more specific thoughts at the end. The Fantastic Four First Steps is easily the best version of the Fantastic Four that we've seen on the big screen. The cast is great, the score is absolutely wonderful, and the decision to set it on an alt-universe Earth with a retro-futuristic aesthetic allows it to stand on its own in the MCU with no prior homework required. It gets to be both a little campy at times to match its 1960s Jack Kirby comic book origins, while also creating very real and relatable stakes for the family and their world. The Fantastic Four is known as Marvel's first family. They're a group of 4 astronauts who acquired superpowers after being exposed to cosmic rays during an adventure in space. This origin is wisely told in the form of a flashback montage for those unfamiliar with the story, without wasting precious screen time for those who know these characters well. First Steps begins 4 years after their cosmic incident, where the team is already well established as public figures and a loving family of 4 that's about to welcome a 5th. The chemistry between the cast is thankfully the strongest part of the movie, with some of the best moments just being conversations between them. Pedro Pascal is forced to tone down his usual charm to portray Reed Richards, whose intellect often conflicts with his emotional understanding. Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm serves as the story's emotional center and foundation of the team. Ebon Moss-Bachrach brings a warmth and heart to Ben Grimm, and though I had my initial doubts with the choice of Joseph Quinn for Johnny Storm, he delivers the expected, though somewhat tempered attitude of the Human Torch. Even Galactus, a character whose appearance could come across as too goofy to adapt, is perfectly executed here. His size and presence are often terrifying, made even more so by the vocal talent of Ralph Ineson. Unfortunately, for everything it does right, there are a few aspects that keep First Steps from really reaching the next level. Ben Grimm is the most likable member of the team, but probably has the least amount of screen time. They introduce an arc for him, but it doesn't really go anywhere satisfying. They start to play with the idea of hero worship and public perception, but that too gets quickly resolved in favor of the larger story. A quick backstory is established for Julia Garner's Silver Surfer, but the resolution of her arc lacks the emotional punch it could have had. In regard to the action, there's a decent amount of sequences that look cool, but they generally lack any standout moments that'll truly wow you. Even the Thing's inevitable shouting of his catchphrase doesn't inspire the cheers that it should. The Fantastic Four First Steps is a solid entry in the MCU, and fortunately one that stands on its own. Sporting an incredible cast, score, and aesthetic, it's only slightly hindered by unrealized potential in certain aspects. Alright, major spoiler warning here. If you haven't yet seen Fantastic Four First Steps and don't want anything spoiled, pause this video, go watch the movie, and come back later. While it wasn't necessary to rehash the team's origin again, I do feel like we missed out on a lot of character development as a result. Dropping into the movie 4 years after the space incident means we don't see them come to terms with how their lives have been changed or how they learn to deal with their new powers. More specifically for Ben Grimm, we don't see him struggling with his change in appearance. The movie hints that he's still dealing with it, but doesn't explore it much beyond that. Speaking of Ben and his relationships, I didn't care for this new Rachel Rosman character that Natasha Lyonne is playing. There's nothing particularly wrong with the character in and of itself, but why aren't we using Alicia Masters here? In the comics, Alicia is a blind sculptor that takes a liking to the Thing and eventually becomes his wife. They have a great chemistry and relationship that I'd love to see play out in the MCU. Perhaps Alicia only exists on the MCU's Prime Earth and not Earth 828? I guess that remains to be seen. Moving on to Shalla-Bal, the Silver Surfer, I thought Julia Garner's portrayal was fantastic, but I wish they'd given her even more. Her heroic turn in helping them defeat Galactus should have been more impactful, but since she disappears after Johnny plays her the messages and doesn't appear again until she returns to save him, we never get to see her mindset shift. There needed to be more of a catalyst to really make that hit home. Since we saw the flashback to her wanting to do anything to protect her child, perhaps they should have focused on shots of Franklin crying as Sue is giving everything she can, which inspires Shalla-Bal to help in an effort to spare another mother from making a sacrifice like she had to. Finally, I have a question for you. Did anyone else go into Fantastic Four thinking that the end would be different than it was? During the mid-credit scene in Thunderbolts, we see the Fantastic Four's spaceship arriving at the MCU's Prime Earth. And at that point, we already knew Galactus was going to be the big bad of this movie. Given the different aesthetic and lack of connection to the rest of the MCU in the trailers, There was also speculation that the Fantastic Four were on a different Earth. Because of those two things, I actually thought that Galactus was going to win, and the team would successfully leave in their ship before the destruction of their planet. It could have been really interesting to see them all, Reed especially, have to deal with that kind of failure. Perhaps they then would have learned that Galactus was planning on going to the Prime Universe and traveled there before him to warn everybody and help save that Earth. Maybe they'd even start looking for a way to restore their own planet as well. Sure, it would have been a massive bummer to end on that note, but it might have felt a little like the end of Infinity War. What do you think? Did you expect something different? Did Fantastic Four First Steps live up to your expectations? Tell me all your thoughts.